No, growing up, it was quite a challenge, because growing up in a small town, being a girl, even though, and we are talking in like early 80s, I was born in 73. So, and I don't care sharing about my age or anything.
Sure, sure, sure.
So going through that phase of life was interesting because alongside me, right, like my neighbors and other people who had daughters and who had young girls, they had a lot of restrictions growing up, right? Like you have to be home by 6:30. You cannot be in certain sports. You cannot go on certain trips. And I think that was a big kudos to my parents that they never said no to me to go and explore. And that was a big, big support.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Haresh Singhani. This is Conversations with Haresh. We'll be talking to people of varied backgrounds, covering various topics. I'm very excited to be able to share these with you. The goal is to increase curiosity and empathy amongst all of us to help us grow professionally and personally at all levels. And of course, we also want to make sure that this is fun. So thank you again, and we'll look forward to having you. Hi, Shilpa.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for inviting me to this podcast. I'm super excited.
Yeah, thank you. And I know we've been juggling schedules as we all have and we all do in life, but I'm glad we could finally connect the dots. Tell us a little bit about Shilpa so the audience can know Shilpa the person, Shilpa the professional, and maybe things like Shilpa the artist or other things you might be.
That's always the case, right? We have so many facets to ourselves, and it's very hard to describe something in like few words or few sentences. And we do have different personas in different facets of our life. So let me begin with the personal side to begin. So it's easier for people to relate. So Shilpa Deshpande, born in India, raised in India until my master's. So I did bachelor's in computer science, master's in computer science in India. Right after finishing my master's in 1995, the whole point was go west, right? So as soon as I finished my master's, I came to the US on an H-1B for job. And literally since then, I have been working related to IT industry. After I came to US, I did get my MBA in finance. Needless to say, I work in New York City. So it's all the financial hub, and I work for a financial company, Ambac Financial Guarantee. It's also, we are pivoting towards a specialty PNC to be a specialty PNC company. And I've been with Ambac Financial now for 21 years. I have had an amazing run on the career side as well. I have been in multiple positions, and we can talk more as we progress through the podcast. But on a high level basis, kind of, I position myself between the business and IT at this point. Currently, I'm head of digital products for Ambac. So personal, professional, and on the artistic side, I do have a lot of hobbies, and I do like to travel quite a lot. I am a trained Kathak dancer, got my bachelor's. I used to run a dance academy for almost 8 years alongside my work. I love real estate. I have a real estate license. I'm a part time real estate agent. I love to fly. It's not current, but I used to have a private pilot's license. So I like to dabble in multiple areas of life.
That's almost like as much as what another person might do in multiple lifetimes.
If we can find time in life, which a lot of people find very hard finding time, I, for some reason, tend to have a lot of time on my hand because I sleep only for 5 hours. That's my max I can sleep. So I start my day very early. I end my day very early. So I just tend to find some time for personal growth. And I love to work. I work a lot of hours as well, but I also like to enjoy life. So that's in a nutshell who I am.
Got it, got it. And there's family, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Can't miss that facet of life. Yes. I have a husband and a son. My son is 15 years old now. It's always a challenge to deal with teenagers, but yeah. But both of them are very, very supportive of all my extracurricular activities, if I may say so. Yeah.
And your son would be a high schooler, right? He's going to be,
He's a high schooler. Yes, yes. He's now in 10th grade.
well, thank you again for sharing your story. So, touching upon the fact that you have pursued many interests and you are also having very consequential professional roles, or you've had and you still have, and you live in the Northeast. You said to me, you mentioned Wall Street and so on, right?
I live in New Jersey, work in New York City.
Yeah, and so, like, I'm on the West Coast in Seattle. We have this impression, or, you guys have a reputation in the Northeast, right, of being fast charging. So in some ways, you are following the stereotype,
I am.
right?
I am. I am. And actually, I did contemplate moving to West Coast. And my sister lives in San Francisco, and I visit very often to San Fran. For some reason, it just seems slow. It just seems slow. I'm sure it's not slow, but it seems slow. And we have this running joke in the family where when I want to go to a restaurant or when I have to go somewhere in San Francisco and I tell my sister that we have to go there, she's like, "Oh my God, that's 40 minutes away." And my thing is, it's just 40 minutes away. So the way we look at things, I think the way the East Coast people look at things and the West Coast people look at things is a bit different. But I do envy the West Coast life because there is so much more to do in West Coast, and I'm sure people have a great work-life balance on that side of the world.
Yeah, perhaps, right? Everything's personal. Otherwise, we would all end up in this giant one city in the world, right? Nobody
Yeah,
else would live anywhere else,
right.
right? And so I think we're spread out because of many, many reasons. And sometimes it's also life phase dependent,
Sure.
right? When you're young, you like certain places, and then when you're having children or kids of your own, you might like different places. Criteria is different, right? Schools come into the picture,
Right.
which may not when you're not in school anymore, and so on. So I'll do a quick anecdote. So about 8 months ago, I think I was in New York City, and I did what I sometimes term daughter diplomacy. So there were about, I think it was four or at least three, but maybe four friends who each had all these families are from Seattle, but each of these families had one daughter who had moved to New York City,
Oh, wow.
right? And the daughters were ranging from fresh or kind of 2, 3 years college recent grads to, I think the oldest daughter, she's in her 30s. So she's been probably out for about 10 years from college and working away. So I had a chance to meet with them, as well as my own daughter, who at the time was in Boston studying, and she's done now, but she's going to be in San Francisco. So these four kids were in New York, and I had a chance to sit down with them individually and then one time in a group setting. And they all loved New York City, even though they were all from Seattle. The one common thing that came up was they all missed nature,
Mm.
right? Otherwise, they had nothing that they really wanted that didn't exist in New York, right? And then, in fact, there were a whole bunch of things that they're like, oh, we like New York a lot more for these other reasons, right? Culture, proximity, et cetera, right?
I can imagine. Yeah. One thing that, we are constantly figuring out which state park to, oh, can we go upstate to Catskill? Can we go somewhere outside of the soul? But I think on West Coast, there is no need to think. You just step out and there are trails. There's so many things.
Absolutely. The city where I happen to live is called Bellevue in Washington State. And I think one of their taglines is a city in a park.
Oh,
So by default, it feels, or at least maybe more so in the old times, but still, it feels like you're in a park, and which happens to have a few housing, areas or shopping areas. And it rains so much here, which is one of the drawbacks for people who find rainy weather challenging. But it makes it so lush and green. The beauty is just very different.
amazing.
But going back to kind of your journey, so in your pursuits, personally and professionally, are there any themes or, things that are part of you or that you were taught that have served you well, and how kind of just your journey, your upbringing in a support system that you might have had, how they've played a role in professional as well as non-professional successful pursuits?
Sure. I mean, there are definitely themes. I mean, I can really pick words that can align. I think one of the biggest drivers, I would say, that has kind of propelled all of this and that has made me as a person overall is definitely my parents. They are pillars of everything that I have done in life. Adventure, they never said no to being adventurous, right? So, and that's one of my thing. Like, I just want to explore as much as I can. And so,
Okay.
one of the themes is any kind of adventure, and sign me up for it. I rarely say no. To most of the things, I rarely say no.
I'm curious, which city or which part of India did you grow up in?
Oh, yes. So I grew up in major city Mumbai, but the minor city within Mumbai is Dombivli. It's a very, very small town. Actually, I grew up in a very small town, which, once upon a time had like a horse carriage when I was a kid. Like we didn't even have like cars or rickshaws at that time. It's that small of a city or a town. So Dombivli is where I grew up, and I did my college so I left after 12th grade. I moved on to another city just by myself for studying in college. Studied in Nasik. That, a lot of people know Nasik. So I studied in Nasik, Pune University. So it was linked to the University of Pune. That's where I grew up. So again, since 18, once I left the house, I was on my own. My parents were very supportive of studying and, going out for studying and exploring nature, cities, exploring different cultures. Travel was always a big point. My dad used to work in Central Railway, so that was also a beneficial point for us to travel. So again, kind of going back to your question, I would say being opportunistic, being adventurous, not saying no, rather saying yes to things that get thrown to you in your life. Those I would say are the major defining part of my personality. No, growing up, it was quite a challenge, because growing up in a small town, being a girl, even though, and we are talking in like early 80s, I was born in 73. So, and I don't care sharing about my age or anything. So,
Sure.
so going through that phase of life was interesting because alongside me, right, like my neighbors and other people who had daughters and who had young girls, they had a lot of restrictions growing up, right? Like you have to be home by 6:30. You cannot be in certain sports. You cannot go on certain trips. And I think that was a big kudos to my parents that they never said no to me to go and explore. And that was a big, big support because I was like, okay, I want to stay up late. I want to go up to Mumbai, explore the city. I want to go out for studying. There was never a no on that end either. As long as you are responsible, you understand the risks, you focus on what you want in life, you're good to go. And that was the foundation in which I grew up. And initially, I thought that this was the norm. Like, all kids grew up like this. But as I went to high school, as I went to college, had more other friends, and I saw how they were growing up with a lot of restrictions while growing up. The personality, like I can see the stark difference in personalities. Like figuring out logistics in life is not a problem, for people who can just figure out logistics. Like, but for some people, if they have to go somewhere, if they have to meet new people, if they have to interact with a different culture, the logistics of going through life then becomes harder if you're not exposed to a variety of things, or if you're not given that empowerment to go explore, fail, it's okay, and you'll learn and you'll grow.
Sometimes in kind of the general expectations, right? If I was to generalize especially in India, where you have such a competitive culture because of the population and so on, right? And limited economic and educational opportunities. Academics is a high priority
It
for
is.
many families, right? And I remember in our own family, I was also born in India and I was in Gujarat till I was 13 and I came to the States in 84. One of the reasons parents were not as supportive of kids' activities or adventures, what have you, was that, oh, it'll distract you from academics, right? So I'm curious in your case how that was balanced. I'm assuming the expectations were still very high for
Oh, yeah.
academics, while the family was very supportive of your,
Yes.
interests in other areas and adventures and so on, right? Other pursuits.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how you balanced that.
So I'll tell you a funny story. It won't take too long. But so I was obsessed with dancing. I love dancing, and obsessed probably was a milder word when I was a kid. I just wanted to learn dance. I just wanted to focus on dance. But I was not bad in academics. I had good grades. I showed very good, promising future academically gearing, right? And my problem was I wanted both. I wanted dancing, but I wanted to make sure that I do good in studies as well. But the obsession of dancing was so much that my practicing or, kind of while walking on the road, I would be practicing my dance steps. And one of our teachers saw that. One of my school teachers, she saw that. She mentioned it to my parents, right? She's like, oh, she's super obsessed with dancing and all she wants to do is stage because I loved acting, dancing, everything stage related. And like, oh, all she wants to do is stage and she's lacking in English. I don't think her English is getting better. And so she had like all these negative points. And my parents were rightfully so, kind of stressed. And they were like, my dad was like, okay, you are not going to learn dance like you're not going to learn dance through a school or a teacher until you graduate. So that was the condition. So you have to graduate because you're not going to be able to sustain your life just by dancing. So you have to make sure that dancing is either a second career or something other than the main career, right? Or just pursue that as a hobby. But you have to graduate first and then you can focus on dancing. And that was, of course, we had a lot of fights, right? We had this whole thing with parents. And then, so I said, okay, fine. Like, I mean, that was a restriction set by my parents. And then because if I had fought for that, then I wouldn't have had, I wouldn't have had opportunities to go on treks and hiking because that they would have been like, okay, no, 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 focus on your studies. So my dad put in a restriction, which was pretty straightforward because he was not focused on first or second or, getting in the boards. He was not focused on that. He's like, make sure you keep yourself in the distinction category 80% plus, A plus. As long as you're A plus, then you can focus on all other activities that you want to focus, but you have to figure out your time and everything. So that was definitely a point of contention, but eventually I finished my bachelor's, I finished my master's, and all throughout I did not leave dancing as a practice. I didn't get any formal training. I didn't do anything formally in dancing, but I participated in all competitions. I kept on dancing. I did everything that I had to do. As soon as I finished my master's, I came to the US. So I was so disappointed that I've got my degree in computer science. Very great, good. But what about my dancing? I really want to learn dancing. So I actually started to formally learn dancing at the age of 28.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then I learned formally, I wrote all the exams and I got the bachelor's in fine arts in Kathak. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
So that must have been in the States, right?
Yes. So I learned from Archana Joglekar. She has a school over here. So I learned from her. And she has a tie up with a university in India. And so then you can write the exams over here, and then you get them checked in India. So it's like a affiliation with the university in India.
Okay. Okay. Understood. And all this while you were working, right? Were
Yes,
you pursuing some of this full time? You were working.
everything, yes. I have been working since the age of 23.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Got it. And so what was that like? And I'm assuming your son might have been, I don't know when your son entered the stage. No
Uh,
pun intended, right? So maybe a little bit later, right? After you got your music qualification. But you've been dancing and keeping it current or keeping engaged, right, with the community
yes,
ever since, I'm guessing, right? Performing and
things have changed after in 2015. as age catches up. Yeah, so my knees
They
started
weren't as
hurting.
happy
So
as they used to be.
yes. Yeah. But so now I dance only for my pleasure. I stopped my classes and other things that I used to teach. So that I stopped. And so now it's just personal fun.
Got it. Okay. Just to explore kind of your professional journey through these years and then to now, what were some of your earlier roles after you started working? And then how did your professional growth evolve? I know you've been at the current company for a long time, at Ambac, right?
Right.
For over 20 years, I believe.
Yeah.
And so what were your roles earlier and where were those work-wise and how did you grow?
So when I came to the States, I came through a company who sponsored my H1B visa, and I started working in the financial industry right away. So the first arrangement, so first 7 years of my career, I was a consultant working for consulting firms, but engaging with various clients like Prudential, E&Y, and I did that for 7 years. After that, after I got my green card to be, my green card was almost in the works. I was very happy first being a consultant. It was just hourly consultant. I had I could work for any number of hours I wanted. And, that was a good phase. I thoroughly enjoyed it initially because whenever I wanted, I would work like for 14 hours, 16 hours because I enjoyed working as well. I would work. Then, if I didn't feel like working, I would take like 3, 4 weeks of break, travel wherever I wanted to travel, come back to work again, like, work a lot. I was single then, so it was very easy to enjoy the workaholic part of life as well as then the fruits of all that. So that was between 1996, 1995. I did my master's. 96, I came to the US. From 96 to 2003, I was a consultant working multiple places right on that one little Wall Street area. So even the consulting was very, very focused, right? Financial services industry. And then unfortunately, 2001 happened, September 11th. It was a sad moment. I actually saw the planes hitting the
Oh,
tower.
wow.
Very, very defining and a changing moment in life. After September 11th, there was again, economy crashed and consulting life became pretty dicey. It wasn't good for consultants as much at that time. And that's where I decided to move into a permanent position. And believe it or not, but AMBAC was my first permanent position.
Got it. Got it.
I joined AMBAC, and when I joined, the CIO at that time, he was like, "You have been consultant and you have had so many multiple roles. You seem like a movement kind of a person. How do I know you would, be in this company for a decent amount of time? Like, how can we be trusting you on that point?" And I had a very good conversation with him. And I was like, how can I be trusting that the company is going to be there for a long time? And we don't know. Like, we don't know what we don't know. And how do we know that the company won't go through bankruptcy or anything else? And how time is such a superfluous kind of a measure. Like, it's a matter of a contract between an employee and a company. As long as my services work for you guys, I'll perform. As long as you guys are there, we'll perform. I joined the company thinking this would be my stepping stone to then find other positions later. And 21 years later, I'm still with the company. And one of the reasons that I think I have been at this company for so long is definitely the culture, amazing culture. And the growth of an employee was very important to our prior leaders. And so movement within the company was never restricted. So it was all about, hey, if you can find yourself to do multiple things and if you can figure out or carve out a career for yourself, you could within the company. So culture was very, very supportive. So I was first hired in IT as an IT manager. I worked as an IT manager for the first almost 3 years, 2003 to 2006. I was an IT manager. And then I was more interested in the business side of life. So I joined the business team as a portfolio risk manager, got my MBA in finance, learned all the aspects of risk management and underwriting for bond insurance, because Ambac is also a bond insurance company. So all about fixed income assets, securities, everything that was deemed not so good in 2008. So the whole financial crisis. So I joined then the risk management team. I became a portfolio risk management, managed a portfolio of almost 15 billion exposure at that time. Everything with credit card debt, everything with rental cars, trucks, truck rentals, and fleets. That's how I got into the business side of life. So I was a portfolio risk manager then for another 4 years. Unfortunately, the financial crisis happened. The needs in the company changed completely. Earlier, the focus was more on premium, right? Get revenue. It was all about premium revenue. After the financial crisis, it was all about managing expenses and managing claims, so managing losses. One great thing that I like of being at this company for so long is I have seen every phase of the company, all the peaks and the valleys, and how companies transform themselves, how companies, mold themselves to fit into the new world, how you pivot from one side to the other, and then how you do that in a way where, of course, your shareholders and stakeholders are happy, but also how you transform your organization, how you transform your operations, your systems, your culture to go through those peaks and valleys. And that was really where I think I grew a lot, right, with the company. So after my portfolio risk management job, I started a department which was more focused on risk operations, losses, and expense management. So I transformed again from risk management into managing risk operations. After risk operations, and then we had a lot of issues, like the company went through bankruptcy. We were put under rehab. So a rehabilitation of the company had to take place. After that phase, I moved myself into more strategic initiatives role where I was managing getting the company out of rehabilitation. So I managed the whole part of going through the rehabilitation and operations and things like that, then coming out of the rehabilitation phase, so that coming out of bankruptcy, coming out of rehabilitation, and now we are in a phase where for the past 4 years, Ambac is now pivoting towards specialty P&C business. So now my focus is helping set up the infrastructure for the new specialty P&C companies. That's the whole journey of the past 21 years.
Wow, so it's kind of interesting because on paper it looks like you've been at one company, but indeed you've probably been at 7 or 6 different companies
Yes,
because the company itself has transformed at that extent, it sounds like.
correct. It has. It has. Yeah. I mean, it has transformed significantly from what used to be one of the top financial guarantees of the United States, from there into now being a fast growing specialty P&C operation.
Got it, got it. Okay. A PNC, just for my benefit, for the audience's benefit.
Property and casualty insurance. So commercial insurances, commercial auto insurance, D&O.
Does your platform, is it something that others in the industry use, or are you a insurance provider and then the platform of the technologies that you have are only for your purposes?
So I'll just explain a little bit of how our PNC or our new property and casualty insurance companies are set up. So we have one tower, which is an insurance company. So we have a lot of insurance companies under Everspan Group. We also have a distribution channel under Serata Group, which is our second arm of the specialty PNC company. So the insurance company, the infrastructure that these insurance companies use, we buy all our systems and softwares, right? And we configure them for the products that we are insuring. But for the legacy company, we were building everything in-house. So for the financial guarantee company, it was all built in-house because there were no softwares or any applications or systems available for that side of the business. But for property and casualty business, there are tons of applications and softwares off the shelf available, which you could, subscribe or buy and then configure to your product needs. So we have completely shifted from build versus now to buy.
To buy. I see. I see. Okay.
And then all the other operations have to be set up around the systems.
Got it. Got it. Okay. How many people have been with the company with any similar tenure as yours?
Actually, Ambac is very notorious for having long tenured employees.
How big is it, if that's shareable?
Right now, it has shrunk over time because at the peak of Ambac, we were over 450 employees. When you say large scale companies, this is still a small scale company. At this point, we are over 150, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. And growing. We went from the peak to the valley, and now it's more of a hockey stick growth kind of phase of the company again.
Is it owned by like a private equity, or who are the owners?
So it's a public company.
Got it. And in your current role, do you have like end client or end customer, like revenue or P&L type of responsibilities, or are you looking after the back end infrastructure mostly?
Right. So no. So I don't have the end customer P&L responsibilities. I have the inside the view. Yeah, managing basically all the digital products for all the companies that are involved in the business.
I see. I see. So one of the themes in our episodes in the past has been exploring setbacks and how, those have proven to be growth opportunities, both at a personal level, professional level, of course, but as a leader, right? How do you, when the team as a whole might have a setback, or somebody in the team has a setback, right? What have been the learnings and how have you recovered, or how sometimes setbacks turn into positive things, right? They help you learn and grow significantly, right? So I'm curious if you've had those kinds of examples, and it sounds like I'm going through some aches and pains myself, back, knee, etc. So those are one kind of setbacks as well. And you mentioned something with the knees there, but just how do you encourage others, assuming, you have a team of people that you're leading at work and probably in different community initiatives. How do you encourage others to look at setbacks and deal with them?
So definitely I've had setbacks in my career. I've had setbacks personally, nothing major. I don't think I've had to, I'm probably not that I believe a lot in luck, but I can say that I've been lucky to not have to face major setbacks in life. But I think the mindset that people have is the biggest culprit and is the biggest tool to work with your setbacks. I mean, to go through your setbacks and to be able to look at a setback from a different mindset. That's all it takes from it to becoming a setback to an opportunity. It's just the way you look at the problem. That's been my mantra, or that's been my way of handling setbacks. There was a time, and as I was saying, during 9/11, the consulting roles dwindled very fast. And it just so happened that I had put all my savings into buying a townhouse. And I literally had a very small bank balance at that time. And I made the down payment and I signed up for a townhouse. And being alone, like I didn't have anyone else to look for. I didn't have my parents here to say, hey, can you help me financially? Right. So I was very, very independent from a financial perspective. And the decision that I made, okay, I want to buy this house. I made a down payment in August. 9/11 happened in October. I lost my job, right? I lost my consulting gig. And then almost for 5 months, I didn't have any consulting position. I couldn't find a consulting position. I couldn't find a permanent position. And literally, my closing of the house was on the 28th of February. I just remember these dates very clearly. 28th of February, 2002. And I had to make all the payments. I had the money for my house down payment, but then I didn't know how was I going to make the installments, the mortgage payments. And plus, during the last week, they do check if you have job or not before signing off on your mortgage. I was, again, looking at it at that time. My only goal was I am going to find a job for myself and I'm willing to do whatever the job is from a perspective, of course, ethical, moral, but from a perspective of if I have to take a step down from my hourly rate, or if I have to adjust my commute, or if I have to, but whatever it takes, The focus is I have to get a job. That was the thing. And I had made a commitment to myself. Again, decision making is very key when you have your setbacks, and you have to stick to how you define it, how you lay out your alternatives, your best alternatives, your backup alternatives. So you have to have that thinking mindset to say, okay, if I do not get a job by 24th of February, when the mortgage check is going to happen, I am going to let go of this house and I'm not going to buy the house. If I get that job, whatever it is, if I agree to that job, then I will stick to that job for a certain period of time. And lo and behold, I did get a job on 23rd of February. It involved commuting for 3 hours one way and 3 hours the other way. Like, so I said, that's fine. I'm going to take the job. I used to leave my house at 4 a.m. I used to reach the office, and then I used to work through the day. I used to leave the office at 6 p.m. I would come back to my house, just sleep, shower again. Next day morning, 4 a.m., I would go to the job. So I think the grit to be able to do whatever it takes for you to get to that point is very important, right? So you have to be able to focus yourself, make sure you look at the setback as that it is a temporary setback. No setbacks are permanent, right? Everything changes in life. There are a couple of other things. I mean, at work, we were at a position where Ambac, being an insurance company, had never paid a claim until 2009. And in 2009, the financial crisis happened. I delivered my son in November 2008. I delivered my son on Saturday, and November 2008 was a very, very bad period for the financial industry.
Of course, yeah. It was probably the bottom.
Right. Yeah, very, very bottom. I delivered my son on a Saturday, November 8th, and Monday I was working because the things were so bad that people had to roll up their sleeves. People were losing their jobs. And at that point in time, our stock dwindled from 96 to penny within 4 days. Before you could blink your eyes, people's savings were wiped out and jobs were at stake because companies were not doing good. Floors were just told that, okay, entire floor is getting dismissed from today on and you're not coming back to work. It was a very emotional period. It was a very testing period, not just for me, but also for my teams. And again, taking them one day at a time. We are all going to get through this. We don't know, we may not have a job tomorrow, but we're just going to go through it. And then trying to take the skill sets that people have, pivoting them towards saying, okay, we never did claims before. Now we are going to set up a claims department. We all are going to change our roles. We have to change the way we look at things. We have to cramp down our expenses. So, when you look at from a hindsight, a lot of these things don't seem to be very innovative, right? From a perspective of strategies, or innovative from a perspective of we didn't come up with like this game changing attitude or anything. It was just about making sure that people felt, okay, we're all in it together and we are going to make that move slowly but surely, and just be patient and things will work out, right? So I think getting the teams to understand that we are all in this together, we have to work through this. There is a light at the end of the tunnel because nothing lasts for too long. Those are the things that kind of help you through the setbacks. It doesn't have to be this great philosophy or anything out of this world. It just has to be like focus, believe in yourself, and you're going to get through it.
I mean, it's whatever, I guess, each one of us finds inspiration in, right? In terms of our own thinking.
Yeah.
Or whatever is motivating or supportive. And sometimes maybe it's when you're younger, right? People have bigger dreams when you're younger, right? Yeah. But as you get older, you know more who you are, and then you kind of start taking pleasure in smaller things sometimes. And maybe you get less ambitious, I don't know, but less idealistic for sure on average as we get older. But survival is important, right? So I could have my big dreams. If I don't achieve survival, then the dreams are not going to happen. And so Prioritizing survival is always a good strategy. And I think sometimes this is something that I'm not sure if you're having this in your family conversations, but we have a daughter who was born in the US. My wife and myself, we both were born in India. And so I think the immigrant generation, right, can be very practically focused. And then our children, right, they don't have the same pressure. They haven't seen the same pressures that we have. And so they do dream differently, if not actually bigger, right? And so sometimes then it takes some more listening, at least on my part, to understand what is motivating, say, our daughter or other people, maybe not myself, but tenacity and grit are very important qualities. And that's something, other people have spoken about as well. And each one of us has our own journey and we experience it differently. And struggle will find us, right? Whether we plan for it or not. And you mentioned earlier the element of luck, right? All of us that if we are in front of a screen, either listening to this or in your case, in my case, talking here, we've had a lot of luck in life to get here. And so that part we don't have control over, but what we do with what we're given, we should have control over.
We should have. And I think as leaders, what happens is when the leaders are not confident and when the leaders are fearful, right? The teams and people who you're leading definitely start doubting and second guessing. So I think as leaders, even though nothing is certain, nothing is written down in future, but leaders should definitely have fear only fear kind of a philosophy. Means, don't just throw up your hands and don't just be very negative when a setback is put in front of you, because that's the reason why we are leaders, is we should be able to figure out a way around it or out of it, right? But a lot of times I have seen that the leaders themselves kind of get into a bit of a fearful mode.
Going back to that family analogy, right? So in professional world and in personal or family world, right, the team members emulate leaders, right? So the children will emulate parents as much as they hate to or hate to admit, right?
They definitely hate to admit it.
Yeah, and eventually it becomes a sign of pride actually when they start admitting it. And then they are very proud of their parents, right? And how they were or how they are, right? But it's unconscious. As followers, we emulate our leaders. And so it's very important. One of the guests, David Glick, who's an executive at Walmart, he said, as leaders, you're always on. And so you have to be on, right? So even if you're not saying anything, how you're sitting, how you're walking, people are watching, right? And
yeah.
So I think it goes back to having trust, right? How do we know Shilpa is going to be here? But then how does Shilpa know that the leadership and the team is going to be here, right? For however long that is.
Right.
Ambac and otherwise. And so I think as a leader, in my experience, one of the things that I've learned is that it's important to have a good team and to be part of a good team. Sometimes you do put on an act to have faith or to appear to have faith, when underneath you might be like, I have no idea what's going to happen, right? Or how it's all going to come together. But that's part of leadership, because you have to create a sense of calm and a sense of confidence, right? Which is, there's no manuals for this, right? But there is this conflicting aim you're going for, which is being realistic while creating calm and confidence, right? And so I think it was Nelson Mandela who said that things only seem impossible until they're done.
Right.
That's an important point anyway, as you were mentioning and I was hearing or thinking about. I guess along those lines, are there role models or any mentors or coaches that have been instrumental or useful in your growth and helping you, maybe even helping you keep the faith when you thought things were unraveling rapidly?
I wouldn't say there is anyone in particular, but I do quite a lot of spiritual reading and I listen to a lot of spiritual talks, and those definitely help me and coach me in keeping my calm.
This has been a wonderful conversation, and I appreciate you taking the time. Oh, one more thing before I forget. Some of the guests have enjoyed asking me questions, so I don't know what kind of things you might have in mind.
I definitely like interviewing people as well. I used to interview people when I was in India. I had a short internship with Doordarshan National Channel, and I used to enjoy interviewing people there. So
Did you have any celebrities you got to
no, it
interview
was
that we
more.
might know?
No,
No.
they were more like book reviews and writers
Oh, okay. Okay, got
and
it.
those kind of discussions, but they were fun. But yeah, as we were talking about challenges and setbacks, right, I was wondering if you could share some of the challenging environments that you have encountered, and nothing to do like personally or professionally, but just dealing with people, right? Like sometimes you have challenges dealing with children or dealing with people.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we all have, right? Especially if you live long enough, right?
Yeah.
Independent of your role, if you spend enough time on Earth, you're going to have people challenges, right? Whether you're the lowest ranked follower in any organization or you're the highest ranked, of course. I've had the opportunity to work in, multiple domains, multiple industries, multiple roles, etc. And also, of course, maybe not as crazily as you, but I've also had multiple roles in terms of life, right? Being a parent, being, a professional leader, etc. At High Tech Advisors, which is the team that I'm working right now, we're a services firm and we work with a lot of different types of clients. Some of the clients are IT teams where the team is a technology enabler for their enterprise. And then some of the teams are product teams where they are building products to be marketed and sold to their end clients, right? So they might have different needs or requirements. But one scenario we run into often is people haggling on price, for example, right? You will not be unfamiliar with this, right?
Yeah.
Both probably as a recipient and as a giver. So I think sometimes people don't appreciate the value one party brings to the table, right? And the sacrifices or the costs that they actually have to make an engagement successful, right? And so sometimes it's a matter of explaining that these are the things I had to do before we entered this room, and these are the things I'll have to do to deliver the goods. And that's why what a person might be asking in terms of price or budget or whatever may not be practically feasible, right? So that can then happen. And then sometimes, so it depends on the motivation of the person as to why they are asking for pricing or business terms, etc. That might be hard to meet. Sometimes they're doing it because, they're just trying to get the best deal for the company, which is the right thing for them to be doing. But it's also the right thing for them to make sure that they partner successfully. Because if they don't, that partner eventually is going to need to pull out because it won't be sustainable, right? Even if assuming the partner compromises in the beginning or at some point to just continue the relationship. There are times when people get confused. I might have your best interest at heart, and this can happen in family, this can happen in friendships, this can happen professionally, but that may not be clear. And so you might start doubting my motivation, right? So I've run into situations where there's an assumption from either maybe it was on my side, hopefully not consciously, that, oh, the other person is acting in bad faith, right? So if there are ways or there are techniques to demonstrate that I am not, if it's coming across that I am acting in bad faith, it's not malicious and it's not intentional and it's probably not even conscious, right?
Sometimes I just look at it and just say, okay, it's a disagreement on a topic or on a subject.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a disagreement between people. And I think looking at from that angle also helps me too.
Okay, Shilpa. Well, thank you very much. We won't give up no matter what.
Yes, that's
Right?
mantra. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.